Thanks for joining us. I'm enjoying the heat out here in the BC interior. As you can see, I've got a lot of sun except up near my hairline. I need a little bit of work up there. But once again, as always, joined by Mike Flannigan, wildfire expert and professor at Thompson Rivers University. He's also in Kamloops, BC. Are you enjoying the heat as well, Mike?
I like the heat, but it's been over 2 weeks of really hot. It's 39 Celsius right now. And yeah, it could be a little bit cooler.
Well, let's break it down here and see if we have any relief coming. And we're going to actually talk about what's happening with the wildfire situation across Canada and the United States. We've got a national preparedness level of 5 in both Canada and the US. What does that mean, Mike?
It means that there's lots of fire and resources are limited. And actually, Alberta and British Columbia called in extra resources about a week ago because they saw what was coming, which is great. Being proactive instead of reactive, and crews from Ontario, I believe, and perhaps Nova Scotia, as well as from Australia and New Zealand are coming to help out. But yeah, we're seeing fire in the West. And, last year, crazy year, okay? Fire all across Canada, but the United States was really quiet. And this year, the fires all along Western North America, and that's the agency protection level or level 5 in both countries. That's the highest level. It's been fairly quiet out east, with the exception of Labrador and North Shore of Quebec. There were some fires there earlier and, evacuations and things like that. But right now, the heat is on, literally, figuratively in the West. And that's what we're seeing. Do notice the purple. This is a great add to this website. The purple is a control monitored, and the size of the circle indicates how big the fire is. Another great feature. But, so we're seeing these fires and, what does it mean? It means they're monitoring, they're watching the fire, and if conditions change and it threatens a community or critical infrastructure, they'll go in and try and suppress that fire. But for now, they're just watching it.
For sure. And looks like they had a real active start across the Yukon. They were really hot for a while there, but it looks like that ridge has shifted east, and we can see that sort of corresponding increase in fire behavior and fire activity in a very similar area that had it last year across like the boreal regions of northern BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan. And perhaps as this ridge begins to shift east, we'll see that activity move east along with it, right?
Yeah, and if you look at the drought maps, that's kind of where the more severe drought's been too. So it does make sense.
Uh, Southern BC, the last few days, we've had a couple lightning events last week and this week. And if we actually zoom in on BC's map here, we can see just constellations of relatively small lightning fires initially. There's a few fires of note now, just 3 fires of note, a couple there near Slocan Lake and a couple, the one out by Ashcroft. But wow, just a whole bunch. It seemed like almost every like 1 in 10 lightning bolts was dropping, it was starting a fire with those lightning strikes across the southern interior.
It's interesting that research has been done and shows in British Columbia around this time of year about 1 of 50 or 1 of 100 cloud to ground lightning strikes starts a fire. Whereas in the boreal, like northern Alberta, it's like 1 in 1,000. And that's just because the fuels here, the vegetation is just so much drier than typically the boreal. And so we had that lightning storm come through on Wednesday, and there's a rash of fires started up. And it looked like some of them you could almost follow the cell and see the fires pop up right after the cell left. It was just incredible.
Yeah, when I was in wildland fire in northern Alberta, that is one thing we would actually do. They'd send us out on patrols to kind of follow thunderstorms. And if there was dry lightning, of course, a thunderstorm producing lightning strikes with little rainfall and dry fuels, and we call it dry lightning. Sometimes you'd literally watch the smokes pop up in behind and be like, there's our fire, got to get on the ground and action that before it gets too big.
Running cleanup following the thunderstorm. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Storm chasing in a helicopter. It was pretty neat. Um, what are we seeing here, Mike? I mean, the last kind of 7 or 8 seasons have been horrible in Western Canada. No, not every single one of them, but since 2017, we've had some big seasons.
So yeah, so the red 2017 to 2024 thus far has burned more area than the previous 68 years, the area in green. It's just an abrupt increase. And 2024 is not done. And who knows how big this year will grow. It's going to grow some because the fires are just ripping. And I'm biased, but I attribute this largely to the weather, extreme weather in particular. Because if you look at years like 2020, 2019, you know,
Hmm.
there's 200 times more area burned in 2023 than 2020 and 2019, even though the vegetation is much the same. So why is the big difference? Primarily the weather, but also ignitions play a role. When they occur, how many do they occur? And when you get a whole bunch of ignitions at the same time, like 100 in a day, there's no fire management agency on earth that can handle 100 new fire starts. And that's a problem. That's why it's really important to not start any human-caused fires because we need all those resources to put out those unwanted lightning fires.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of these years where there's a lot of area burned is really driven by, at least across Canada as a whole, by these sort of remote, these boreal gobblers that are out in the middle of the boreal forest region. Like this year, for instance, a lot of that area burned is basically from those 2023 holdover fires from last year, right?
For BC in particular.
Yeah.
And yeah, in our area burn numbers, much of it comes from these fires that were monitored, like we saw in the map from SIFSI.
Hmm. Yeah, and so speaking of, area burned this year, we're about 5 or 6 times less than this time last year, right?
Yeah, well, last year was the exceptional off the charts year, so I'm not surprised. It's much closer to our 10-year average, just a little bit below our 10-year average, which, the SIFSI site has. If you look at their situation report, which is updated every day, they have 5-year, 10-year, 15, you can see in the screen there. And so the 10-year average for this time of year is just over 2.3 million hectares. But we're catching up. We've been burning a lot of hectares recently.
Yeah, I assume that's going to change in a big way with this persistent ridging in Western Canada. We can kind of see that here. This is a forecast fire weather index, sort of a proxy for fire danger or how, easily we could start a wildfire here across. You can see very, big dipole there across Canada with like fire danger in the west and nice and cool out in the eastern part of the country. Are we going to see this fire risk shifting east in the coming days, you figure?
Yeah, as the ridge breaks down and shifts to the east, the fire weather extremes will shift into Saskatchewan, and we're seeing them in Saskatchewan already on this forecast, but into Manitoba and even northwestern Ontario. And there are some fires burning in Manitoba already, and Ontario could see some fire activity this year if they have the ignitions. There was a lightning storm went through yesterday, but it was fairly wet. So we'll see if they get some starts. Yeah, they could see some fire spread.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, this is, really
Oh,
touch and go here in the BC interior, especially with, we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but we're going to be seeing this ridge sort of starting to break down. And that's going to be a critical window here in the West where we're going to be watching for the potential of, new fire starts, but also any ongoing wildfires could really ramp up in intensity.
yep, classic collapse of the ridge, breakdown, and cold front passage. Yeah.
Smoke is starting to be a problem across Western Canada as well. Again, as a result of that, we can see it's actually not too bad in the southern interior right now, unless you're in the kind of local vicinity of some of those fires that are burning. But Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and we're exporting that smoke, beyond our borders as well, as we can see here.
Yep, I'm already hearing from American media outlets complaining about our smoke. And, I heard something recently from a colleague, Sarah Henderson. We often talk about good fire and bad fire, but when it comes to smoke, there is no good smoke. There's only bad smoke, and there's a lot of it there, and it's not good for our health.
And I wanted to touch more on that in a second here. We got another slide looking at uh, the air quality, but as we can see, there's one interesting thing I wanted to point out here as a weather nerd in southern Alberta. If we notice, look at the smoke here along the Saskatchewan-Alberta border, really thick there. A little thicker back toward the foothills as well here, but there's two areas there, actually three in a row along the foothills here, one in the southern, south central part of Alberta and one in the part of southwestern Saskatchewan there, where there's notably less smoke, more sunshine. And you can see where that air is converging and causing thunderstorms to develop in that clear area where, it's hotter here because, wildfire smoke is going to be reducing that incoming solar radiation and causing, it's not going to be as unstable in the atmosphere. Storms may not develop, and as we can clearly see here, where it's sunny, that's where the air is coming together, and we're getting those storms popping up. There's also areas where storms are popping up in the smoke, but you can see it's far less widespread.
Yeah, smoke inhibits the development of thunderstorms and the precipitation that comes with it. But yeah, smoke can knock the daily high by 3 degrees, 5 degrees, even more. That looks really thick. So it's much cooler where the smoke is.
Yeah, pretty gross. And actually, I'll skip ahead. We might as well, since we're talking about it here, it's just going to load in 1 second. We can talk about how bad the air quality is across
Bad.
sort of Western North America. You can see it's really kind of focused in these areas where there's fires burning locally here in parts of central Oregon, southern BC interior getting worse. Horrible air quality across much of central northern Alberta and Saskatchewan there, but we can see there's, those effects of that smoke is really spreading far and wide at this point.
Yeah, sometimes the smoke stays aloft. And so the stuff you breathe isn't so bad, just gives you gorgeous sunsets. But we can see around Edmonton, it's really bad. I'm sorry to see that.
Hmm. And I also wonder, and maybe you can shed some light on this too. It's like if you think about areas of the world where there's impacts to air quality as a result of wildfire smoke in particular, like areas that have lots of wildfire activity, sometimes Australian, the bushfires there can get pretty bad. Mediterranean regions, Siberian Russia. But it seems like I'm wondering if in terms of like overall impacts to population and the amount of smoky days that human beings on this planet are enduring, it seems like it's worse in Western North America than anywhere else, at least in the last 7 or 8 years. Do you have anything you could shed on that?
Actually, we're not the worst, okay?
We're not.
Um, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, peat fires, perennial peat fires. Some of them have been burning for 30 years. And,
Wow.
there are studies that show globally more than 340,000 people die prematurely due to wildland fire smoke. And most of that is because of these persistent peat fires in Southeast Asia. So, yes, and when we saw the horrible fires in Australia, unfortunately, 30 some people died because of those fires directly, but it killed at least 10 times more due to the smoke. So smoke is, it's indirect, but it's a significant impact. And last year, the 2023 fires, we saw 100 million people northeastern seaboard of the United States impacted by smoke from fires 1,000 kilometers away. That's significant impacts from fire.
Okay, that's good to know. I know that we do have it pretty bad out here at times. Over 500 smoky hours in Calgary last summer was just horrible to endure. But and it's incredible to think too. Like Indonesia, Southeast Asia, it's a relatively humid climate, except in El Nino years where they have enhanced drought in the Western Pacific region. So there you go. Anywhere where you get prolonged hot, dry, windy weather, even if you're in a wetter climate, you can get, even without drought in certain cases, we can get wildfire activity. Let's break down the forecast here in the coming days. I want to take a look both at the near term and maybe perhaps a look at the back half of summer, just to see what could be happening. I'm particularly concerned about this coming this ridge breakdown through the weekend and into early next week here. So what we can see in Western Canada, and I'll get Mike to shed some light on this as well, but we've got this upper level ridging, very persistent ridge that's been in place here across Western Canada, somewhere between the Continental Divide and basically somewhere around the Alberta Saskatchewan border. We can see that ridge as we get into Sunday and Monday continuing to build in intensity at the same time that an upper low is pushing in from the west, causing those gradual upper level height falls. So that basically acts to destabilize the atmosphere as we get rising air and cooling air aloft over top of hot, dry, windy weather in the low levels. So we're kind of really setting the stage for some significant fire weather through Sunday and Monday in BC interior in particular, as it's really the peak of the heat. We could be getting temperatures into the high 30s, low 40s in those interior valleys. And potential, I would say, if there's any big fires ongoing, we could definitely see some like pyro CB action, especially on Sunday and Monday. Tuesday, that ridge starts to shift east into Alberta. The winds pick up in the BC interior, which looks concerning, and that ridge starts to break down across northern Alberta. So it looks like that Sunday to Wednesday timeframe, Mike, is going to be pretty concerning for wildfire danger in Western Canada.
It could be explosive. It's scary. The winds are really strong. typically there's a cold front associated with this ridge breakdown, and that brings a wind shift. So that the flank or the side of the fire, which can be very long when you have strong winds, becomes the head of the fire, and you can see rapid growth. And this is exactly what happened August 17th, 18th, 2023. That's when the shoe shop fires and the West Kelowna fires blew up. So yes, it's a watch out situation.
For sure. Could potentially be one of the more high impact, events of the summer here as we see temperatures, like I say, soaring into the high 30s, low 40s, highly anomalously warm temperatures there across BC Sunday into Monday. And then as we get into Tuesday, it starts to shift off to the east. But like I say, it's, still southern interior, still pretty hot there Tuesday, even Wednesday, before that upper low really moves inland. And we see a few days here of reprieve likely through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and some potential precipitation. So, even though we're not going to get much in the way of precip to the south, the cooler temperatures will offer reprieve for fire crews out there. But up north, that, we could be seeing some significant rainfall up north, as we can see with that forecast.
Yeah,
Uh,
much needed rainfall. Yes,
let's hope this happens. This is out by, next Sunday. Heavy precip across northern BC and southern Yukon Territory, southern Northwest Territories, northern Alberta. That would certainly put a damper on a lot of that fire activity up there, especially. I hope
yeah,
it really
yeah,
rains on those fires in the northeast corner there.
yeah. Right at the border between Northwest Territories, Alberta and BC, there seems to be a little island of not much precip. So let's hope that that's wrong and that they do get rain, a lot of rain there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the back half of summer, unfortunately, it does look like, at least according to longer range model guidance, fairly high confidence of that ridge continuing to build, perhaps a little bit further east than where it is now, focused over Saskatchewan and Manitoba over the next 30 days or so. But that'll keep that hot and dry weather persisting across the west there. That's our precipitation anomaly map. This is likely largely due to that precipitation we're going to see with this incoming upper low. But southern half of the BC, of British Columbia, and right across the prairies into northwestern Ontario, significant dry signal there.
Yeah, it looks like the fire is going to hang in southern BC, and the action shifts to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario, it looks like, perhaps even Quebec.
For sure. So, you know, do we trend into, here's our temperature anomaly as well there, really hot weather focused on the western prairies. We've had a lot of precipitation in this region this year, which has just been a literal godsend for agricultural purposes here. We would have been in big trouble had it not rained there. It's probably going to end up being a really good year for crops in the western prairies, even though it's going to be maybe a return to drought conditions by the end of the summer. But this is going to makes me wonder if we're going to be seeing like things trending toward a 2023 type scenario across the sort of boreal region of Western Canada, with this hot, dry signal into the end of the summer.
Yeah, it could be quite active for the next month, especially, in Saskatchewan, Manitoba. This hot weather and the rain they've had in southern Alberta and southern Saskatchewan, great for corn. Corn loves the heat.
Mm-hmm.
It uses something called a carbon-4 pathway. And so a lot of the plants we have that are carbon-3, their stomata close when it gets too hot. Corn just keeps on growing. It loves the heat. So it could be a really good corn crop this year. A good time for Tabor corn.
Tabor corn, Chilliwack corn. I just had my first Chilliwack corn earlier this week. It seemed early, but it was, some of the best corn I've ever had. Have you enjoyed Chilliwack corn out here in BC, or are you a Tabor corn guy?
I've been eating BC corn the last few years. There's we have a farmer's market in Kamloops, and they have a corn guy from not too far down the road. So I try and eat local. So
Right on.
all good. It's all good.
Yeah. Corn season is upon
Yeah.
us, right on.
And
From
berry
wildfire to
season.
corn. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Some
it's
smoky
all
corn.
good.
Yeah. Right on, Mike. Anything else you'd like to add today in our discussion? Always appreciate your expertise.
As I say, if you see a fire, report it right away, because even under these extreme conditions, we can put it out if we get to it right away. So, you know, 310 fire, is Alberta's call number. BC is star 5555 on your cell phone. And they both have apps. And the BC app in particular, you can report a fire, you can take a picture, geolocate it, and taking a picture really helps them because they get to see how much smoke there is and if it's bent over, which suggests it's windy. So yeah, see a fire, report right away. And as always, be careful with fire. You look sideways in the bush right now and we can start a fire. So
Yeah.
be safe.
Yeah, some great actionables there. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we'll get back to you. And thanks a lot for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.